Hello, this is meteorologist Brad Warner for Region Weather Live, your YouTube source for weather across the Dakotas and Minnesota, with one more look at this big storm that's going to be affecting our region here going Sunday, Monday, and perhaps even lingering on into Tuesday. And so we're going to start off by looking at about Sunday around 3 a.m. and just a little wider view here to start off, at least to point out how we continue to have, we're going to have this moisture coming in off the Gulf and basically running into this cold air and going to be bringing us rounds of snow, freezing rain, sleet, rain, thunderstorms, all kinds of stuff across our region as this kind of pulls out, moves to the east, northeast, all the while continuing to bring in moisture up from the south. Now, once we get to about 6 to 7 a.m. Sunday morning, that's really when things begin to really get cranking up. Now, notice again, we've got this moisture moving to the north and slamming into this colder air a little bit further to the north. So we're going to have kind of a mix of rain and sleet and freezing rain, and then eventually turning over to snow, with some areas getting a moderate to perhaps even some heavy areas at times already beginning Sunday morning. But a couple of things I want to point out to keep an eye on as this thing kind of ramps up here. First is going to be the amount of snow basically within this region early on and how much snow kind of develops on the early part of the system. And then also the other thing to keep an eye out for is the amount of freezing rain and rain down here kind of in southeastern parts of South Dakota and eventually making its way northward as we get later into the period. But this is going to cause some trouble with the forecast and trying to determine just how much snow will accumulate, because there's going to be that freezing rain and sleet potential on top of it. So it's going to be kind of difficult in some of these areas as this area moves to the north and east to really determine exactly how much snow will accumulate. So we'll continue to put this in motion here, and this is at about 9 a.m. on Sunday or so. And notice that snow really begins to pick up in intensity across eastern parts of South Dakota, southwest Minnesota. By noontime now, that snow really begins to get cranking up across much of southern Minnesota, perhaps even southern North Dakota, perhaps even parts of west central Minnesota as well. In the meantime, we continue to have some decent snows across western North Dakota. So all the while, this stuff is just continuing to accumulate through the morning and going on into the afternoon hours. Now, there's a bit of a question mark as to how much snow will kind of fall in this southwestern part of South Dakota region, just because the models aren't really handling that particular area too well. They're sort of all over the place, and I'll show you an overall snowfall accumulation of what I'm thinking, but there is some uncertainty down in this region just because the models just don't seem to really agree exactly on that particular region, especially early on in the forecast. And also note by noontime that snow beginning to move just north of the Highway 2 region, so just barely making it, into the far northern reaches of North Dakota and Minnesota. And it doesn't move a whole heck of a lot as we get into the evening hours. This is 6 p.m. on Sunday evening. And boy, look at all the heavy snow perhaps falling across southern Minnesota, eastern parts of South Dakota, where this moisture gets drawn up and basically runs into the frontal boundaries here. And that's why we're getting this transition from rain to sleet to snow. And it's along those boundaries, unfortunately, that where all the critical elements kind of come together and really drop the precipitation. So if you get freezing rain or sleet, you're going to get a bunch of it. If you get snow, you're going to get dumped on. It's going to be really intense at times. And you can see where this particular model, and really the models have sort of come to agreement with the acceptance of maybe shifting a little bit, north or south, maybe 50 miles or so. Overall, there seems to be a really good agreement as to where this heavier snow will begin to develop. Now, as we get to 9 p.m. on Sunday and then midnight, boy, again, that snow just continues to dump across southern parts of Minnesota and across eastern parts of South Dakota, just continuing to bring all kinds of heavy snow. Meanwhile, the rain now starts to move just a little bit further north. You notice now kind of gets above or to the north of Sioux Falls and north of that I-90 corridor. Meantime, we also have some heavy snows across the North Shore going on, as we're likely going to be getting a southeasterly fetch off the lakes. We're going to be getting some lake effect snow off that sucker. And the other thing to point out here as we go into Sunday night is we're going to be having some strong southeasterly winds areas, 35, 40 miles per hour. And then on the back side of this, where some of the heavier snow is falling, we're going to be having northerly winds at about the same amount, 35, 40 miles per hour. So we're going to be looking at, some heavy snows, reduced visibilities, likely zero visibilities in some areas between the heavy snow and the wind. Now, continuing on as we get to 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Monday morning, again, but the snow just continues to fall within this region, just north of Sioux Falls and into southeastern part of Minnesota. Moderate, heavy snowfall's continuing. That rain now stretching over to southeastern parts of Minnesota. Perhaps we're even going to be getting a few rumbles of thunder as we go through the day on Monday. Now, we also start to get a little more increase in intensity across northern parts of Minnesota as well. Those winds continue to crank out of the north into eastern parts of South Dakota on Monday morning. And then as we get to 9 a.m. and noon on Monday, the rain pushes just a little bit further north. We continue to have a pretty decent band stretching from northeast to South Dakota across to northern parts of Minnesota as well. Those winds continuing to blast out of the north. So plenty of snow blasting going on. Scott, I'm sure you're going to appreciate that terminology that you've developed there. But yeah, there's going to be some areas that the roads are going to be shut down. There's going to be zero visibilities. It's going to get nasty. And on top of that, some areas, like I pointed out earlier, are going to be getting the freezing rain and sleet to go on top of it all. And it will also be interesting to see how some of these areas get some heavy snow, and then eventually the rain moves overhead with some thunderstorms. So is there that possibility, perhaps in some localized areas, of some flooding? We will see. And so continuing on, by 3 p.m. and 6 p.m. Monday evening, there's where you can see some of those storms now developing across southeastern parts of Minnesota. And I wouldn't be completely surprised if you see a little bit of hail falling out of these storms, because you might get enough lift. And because the atmosphere is going to be cool enough still, it won't take a whole lot of updraft to get into that colder region of the thunderstorms to where some hail might fall out of that. So don't be surprised if you get maybe some storm advisories, or maybe even the isolated severe thunderstorm warning because of the hail potential. Now, as we get to 9 p.m. and midnight Monday night, early Tuesday morning, that freezing rain now stretching a little bit further north, that rain pushing a little bit further north as well. We continue to have a pretty good band, just continues to drop across eastern parts of South Dakota and stretching northeastward. And again, we continue to have that northwesterly winds on top of it. By 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. on Tuesday, freezing rain, sleet, heavy snows across northeastern parts of Minnesota. It's really going to be just nasty by the time we get to Tuesday morning up in the Arrowhead region of Minnesota. Continue to have really decent rains across southeastern parts of Minnesota, as you can see, and that's where that flooding perhaps that could take place in some localized areas. I continue to have light snow just lingering a little bit further on the back end of this. We're going to have some stronger northerly winds. So if anybody does get some snowfall, they're going to be seeing probably continue to see the lingering drifting, at least, of snow across a good chunk of the region here. And then on top of that, there's probably still going to be some areas that have the potential for seeing some blizzard conditions as we get into Tuesday morning as well. And by 9 a.m. and noon on Tuesday, that snow begins to move on out. We have some moderate snows continuing still up in the northeast, but eventually by the time we get to the evening hours on Tuesday, most of that is now lifted to the north. And I think finally by Tuesday evening, we're going to be fully out of the storm across the entire region. And a whole lot of information to kind of jam in there on you all. So hopefully you're able to focus on the area that you're concerned about and just kind of get a feel for how things are going to pan out. Now I'm going to show you a bunch of graphics that I made, and I'm going to be sure to post these on my social media sites, so make sure you keep track of them there, as I will be adjusting them as I see fit throughout tonight and going into tomorrow as well. But we're first going to start off by taking a look at the timing of the snowfall here. And what we're looking at here is the snow starting here down in southwestern part of South Dakota before midnight. So before midnight Saturday night is kind of when some of this snow is expected to develop within that region. Now between midnight to 6 a.m. Sunday morning, reaching through Williston, Bismarck, Aberdeen, through Sisseton, down into that Fairmont region here. So you guys in blue, that's kind of when the snow is going to be moving to the northeast and moving through your area. So between midnight and 6 a.m. on Sunday. And then as it continues to kind of move to the northeast and east, that area will move between 6 a.m. and noon, basically through Grand Forks, just north of Brainerd, through Hinckley, and then moving into Wisconsin as well. And then noon to 6 p.m., basically from Grand Forks to Duluth and across to basically this region here, including, again, kind of that Bemidji area. And then as we get into Sunday night and into Monday morning, as that storm kind of begins to rise to the north and east, that's when kind of the snow starts to move into these regions further to the north. So that's why we're looking at basically Sunday night and lingering into Monday across these northern areas. And I'll be curious what you all think. I'm using a little different map here, so let me know if you like it or if you like the other one a little bit better. But this is kind of what I'm thinking right now, at least for the total snowfall accumulation goes. So we got that snow that's riding to the north and east early. So we're through Saturday night, early Sunday morning. And this is when a good majority of this snowfall is going to occur. And I kind of included or drew that blue just a little bit further north to include Bismarck as well. But then as things really get ramped up and that moisture rides to the north and east and slams into the colder air, that's when the rest of this will take place through later, I guess, Sunday in through Monday as well. But this is the bullseye right now. This is the main bullseye where we're looking 15 to 20 to perhaps as much as 24 to 25 inches in some of these areas across northeastern parts of South Dakota, southwest-ish part of Minnesota as well. There might be some areas that need to be drawn a little bit later through kind of the lakes country, including like Alexandria and perhaps Fergus Falls, up to Brainerd. There might be some areas in there where maybe some higher amounts need to get drawn in, and also another area to keep track of where some higher amounts might be possible is kind of back through that Chamberlain area, back to the southwest of this region. So again, we're going to have to adjust this still as time moves on. Still a wide range of snowfall accumulations where just depends on how exactly this storm moves. We're not 100% certain on the amounts, but this is kind of what we're looking at right now. And then also, of course, along the North Shore, because we're going to be getting that fetch off the lake, we're likely going to be seeing over 15 to 20 inches of snow up there as well. Now, the rest of these areas in purple, we're looking at that 10 to 16 overall variety. Otherwise, 6 to 12, as I said, in this blue area, kind of including the Twin Cities, running through Sioux Falls. And some of these areas will be a little difficult to tell exactly how much snow will accumulate. And again, I'll kind of go back to the freezing rain. I'll show you that graphic here in a bit. And then the other area here is we have 6 to 12 just north of Fargo. And there's going to be another question as to how far north some of that snow makes it. Again, just it depends on how quickly that low decides to turn north. Will it be, a little more towards Duluth? Will it kind of linger out here through Wisconsin a little more? That will make a difference as to how much snow kind of backs up into this region. And then otherwise, as we get further to the north, 3 to 6 through the Grand Forks and north of Bismarck and up through Williston, and a trace to 3 inches maybe across to the remainder northern parts of North Dakota. Again, kind of 3 to 6 through Rapid City. There's some question as to maybe they'll get a little bit more, just depends on how some of the snow tracks early, and then 3 to 6 across southern parts or southeastern parts of Minnesota. And here's where we got that freezing rain and sleet potential across southeast parts of South Dakota, stretching just to the Twin Cities, maybe a little bit further north through the Lakes Country, Duluth, up through Ely, up through Grand Marais and Two Harbors as well. This will be later, this will be earlier in the period, but that's going to play a factor as to how much snow will accumulate through some of these regions. So that's why we've drawn these areas of uncertainty, again, kind of through Sioux Falls up to the Twin Cities. May need to pull a little bit further to the north and east as well. Just depends on how some of that freezing rain tracks there. And then I also mentioned this area further to the north. Just depends, once again, where will that track be of the storm will play a factor on some of these areas further to the north. So right now, Grand Forks is kind of in the 3 to 6 mark. Will it be closer to 3? Will it be more than 6? We'll see, but right now that's kind of where we're drawing it for now. And then, as I said, this area back through Rapid City, kind of an uncertainty there as to the potential for them receiving a little more than forecasted. Now, the last little graphic I'm going to show you is just the potential for blizzard type conditions. And the best area, the best chance is going to be this area in red here. So basically just east of Aberdeen in through the Sistaton, Brookings, back through Chamberlain, Huron area. That's going to be the main area that's got that potential for seeing the blizzard conditions between the amount of snow they're going to receive and also the stronger winds that are going to be howling down through this area, eventually out of the north. The other most likely area, of course, is going to be along that north shore where they're going to be getting all kinds of snow up through that region. Now, a secondary area just depends on how much snow some of these areas ultimately get. And now notice I say Monday. I didn't really say Sunday, and that's because the winds don't get cranking a little more until Sunday night and going into Monday. Now, there will be reduced visibilities due to the heavy snow on Sunday, but these are going to be Monday blizzard conditions because we both have the snow on the ground and the strong winds. And so perhaps just again depends on how far north some of the snow makes it, but we got that possibility. At least we get that funneling effect down the Red River Valley. A lot of times that creates some blizzard conditions kind of out of nowhere, then extending back through Jamestown down to Pierre, and then back towards that Rapid City area. Also, again, depends how much snow Sioux Falls gets, but basically within this region and then across west central parts of Minnesota. And so Tuesday, possible lingering blizzard conditions. We've got strong northerly winds continuing within this region and through here. So kind of including that Morris and Mankato and perhaps just kind of brushing Sauk Center-ish area coming up to that I-94 region. That's kind of going to be the area to watch with where some blizzard conditions could be lingering into Tuesday. And then in this yellow area across eastern parts of South Dakota, southwest Minnesota. And finally, one last thing to show you is just all the winter storm warnings, advisories, and storm watches as well. Within this pink area here is all the winter storm warnings. More than likely, some of this will expand, maybe even narrow down in some locations, and probably see some blizzard warnings pop up as well as we go through time. And then these areas in purple, we have winter weather advisories, winter storm watches across southern parts of South Dakota, and then kind of southeast South Dakota as well. Notice the little lack of any type of weather warnings or advisories here in the far southeastern part of South Dakota, just because of more than likely they're just going to be getting rain or maybe some freezing rain, but they're going to be lacking on the winter end of this particular storm. And so there you are, a whole lot of information being thrown at you. I hope it does well as to helping you plan for what to do for Sunday, going on into Monday and Tuesday as well. And as I said, I'll make sure and update my graphics on my social media sites, so make sure you pay attention there. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell button that pops up beside it. That way you do know when I am on live, and you can ask questions on there as we kind of go through the day. But if not, please just leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Somebody left me a little tip on the comments on my last video that got my attention, and they asked a question about northeastern part of South Dakota. So I made sure to reply to them on the comment area. So keep looking up. If you have any more questions, please feel free to ask once again. But that's also a way to kind of get my attention, I guess, but I do appreciate that little tip as well. All right, everybody, for Region Weather Live, I'm meteorologist Brad Warner. Everybody stay safe for the remainder of the weekend, going early into the next week, and we'll be in touch. Everybody have a good day.